There are three main drivers of hypertrophy. And what we want to do is we want to train in a way that induces these when our goal is to build muscle. Now, this is aside from progressive overload. A progressive overload is the backbone of stimulating adaptation. And within this, there are three main drivers of hypertrophy. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So a quick recap on progressive overload, which I have covered in separate videos. But essentially, progressive overload is asking the body to do more and more over time. It's trying to increase its capabilities. For example, if you did the same amount of weight for the same amount of reps with the same exercises in the same way, week to week forever, you never have a new reason to get stronger or a new reason to adapt because you're only maintaining your current capabilities. So progressive overload is increasing the weight and or reps or just general stress on the body over time, that the body always has a new reason to get a little bit stronger and a little bit better. Now that's the backbone of training, and that's exactly why we try and progress. Within this, there are three main drivers of hypertrophy. Number one, mechanical tension. Number two, muscle damage. Number three, metabolic stress. And in your training plan, we are trying to design methodologies that induce all three of these to its maximum capabilities within the context of what you can actually recover from and perform well. Okay, so mechanical tension is the tension going through the muscle as the muscle travels through a range of motion. Ways that we can increase this are increase the weight, but only when you're within the rep range, and increase the range of motion. So that's why we're so big on asking our clients to use the greatest range of motion possible and make sure that they're really challenging themselves with the weight that they use. If you're using a weight for 8 to 12 reps that you could easily do 15, it's not challenging enough, and there's room for more. If you're using a weight that you're only using half reps for, say, a bicep curl, there's room for more range of motion. So if you want to induce more mechanical tension, use greater ranges of motion and make sure that you're challenging yourself with your weight, honestly challenging yourself. Now, metabolic stress usually is induced as the session progresses, but generally is represented by the pump. So if you're getting a big pump in the gym, that is a sign that you're creating good amounts of metabolic stress. And this is also a massive driver of hypertrophy. So if you're in the gym and you're not really getting a pump, there's a problem there, and there's a lot of progress left on the table. So chat to us about how we can improve this. But generally speaking, after you do sets, you should have an understanding of the target muscle. You should have a perceived amount of tension in the target muscle as you perform the exercise. If you're following the rules on mechanical tension, you're using good ranges of motion or full ranges of motion with challenging weights, you should notice that if you really push yourself to achieve as many reps as you can, you get a really big pump. This is causing metabolic stress. The third one, muscle damage. It sounds very extreme. It's not very extreme. It's a good thing. They're micro tears in the muscles. Now, the phase of a rep in which this seems to happen most based on the science is actually the stretch. So I'm going to keep using the bicep curl as an example. If you bicep curl the weight up, which most people think is the most important part, it's actually not. The point in which you're stretching the muscle back out on the way down is actually the most beneficial for muscle damage. Most of muscle damage occurs on the stretch or the eccentric portion of a muscle contraction. So that's why we always want you to control your weights. It's not just about bicep curling the weight up in the beginning. It's about making sure that you almost resist the weight on the way down. And if you can do this, you can use great ranges of motion. You can push yourself to achieve as many reps as you can. You can get a good mind-muscle connection. You can really control the stretch on every rep that you do. You can pick weights that really challenge you. You know that you are getting the most out of these three main drivers of hypertrophy and ultimately getting the most out of your training. Now, all of these things need to happen as progressive overload is induced. So just bear these things in mind when you're training. These usually come together to form a lot of the rationales behind why we tell you to execute technique in a certain way.